Hello, ALSD community. Welcome back to many of you. Welcome to anyone who hasn't joined before. I'm Amanda Veerhoff. I've been with the ALSD for over a decade, and I can't wait to share today's panel. I'm honored to moderate with three incredible industry veterans here from SMI, and we'll jump into the panel here momentarily. We're going to talk about how we get our venues open. We're going to talk about races that have run, some without fans and some with fans. We're going to talk about how we can do live in-person events safely and with the pizzazz our fans and clients have been used to. So we'll jump into that here in just a minute. I just want to go over just a few housekeeping notes before we get started. As we always do, all of our panels are going to live and already do, for the ones that have already happened, on ALSD.com. We have a training center page that acts as a resource for you all that has all of these panels, as well as a lot of other resources. So check that out on ALSD.com, and also our social feeds. We'll have this panel and others that have run previously that you can check out anytime, as well as our YouTube page. So tune into those. If you have any questions about this panel today, obviously there's a chat function down below, but this panel or any that have happened before, ALSD's emails are super easy to remember. Amanda@ALSD.com. And then you all have probably seen other webinars with Jared and Max. Same thing, first name @ALSD.com. Get in touch with us anytime. I also want to talk a little bit about our virtual conference and trade show and design and build forum. You know, it's not the desired outcome this year. We don't get to rub elbows and shake hands and hug with all of our counterparts as we always do. We're going virtual this year, as many of you know. Late October, October 27, 28, 29, 26 through 29. And, you know, the platform's exciting. It offers a lot of networking. It offers virtual trade shows, lots of breakouts, and lo and behold, which you'll see soon, some really cool celebrities that will share inside the industry stories and also anecdotes from outside looking in. So look at your emails, look at our site, keep up on what's coming down the pike for the virtual show. The pricing's also significantly less than a physical show, and you don't have travel. We've got quantity discounts, so check that out for sure. And importantly, email us, hit us up. If there's a topic that you don't see on the agenda, we want to know about it. You know, 2020 has taught us that we need to remain fluid and that a lot of changes can be coming down every single day. So again, check it out, ALSD.com, look at the schedule. Please get in touch with us if you have any questions on the schedule. And two people that have attended a lot of our conferences actually are sitting on today's panel. And I actually want to ask you guys, if you don't mind, Steve and Jessica, one, introduce yourselves, and then also tell us, you know, why you've attended in the past and why this year might even be a more crucial year to attend. So Steve, starting with you, introduce yourself and tell us.
Yep. Thanks, Amanda. Thanks for the nice intro. And Steve Swift, Speedway Motorsports. I am the Senior Vice President of Operations and Development. I have been coming to ALSD for several years now, and it's been a great experience for us, you know, to be able to see what the other sporting venues are doing and to understand what the fans are expecting when they come to sporting venues. So not only in the football world or the baseball, basketball world, but also the NASCAR world. And it helps us to stay in par with, you know, what fans' experiences are when they show up to events, whether they be racing events or football events, and then also understand the operational side of things and what people are initiating and what the expectations of the fans are when they show up from a security stance or just operations in general.
Thanks. How about you, Jessica?
Hi, I'm Jessica Fickenscher, and again, thank you, Amanda, for having us. This is great. I am the Chief Experience Officer for Speedway Motorsports, and like Steve, we've been attending the conference for so many years now, and it's so valuable for us. We've always gotten something out of it. I don't think there's a year that's gone by where we've missed it. And there's also so much to see and do. So it's great for us to have a few different folks from our company go, so we're not missing anything. But I do think this year, based on what our industry is faced with, I think it's more important, more than ever, to see what's out there. Again, kind of to what Steve said, what are the fans expecting? What's new out there for innovations? What are best practices? You know, we all need to kind of come together right now and get our industry back open and get fans back in our stadiums, arenas, and speedways.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and we're excited to do so. Geoff, why don't you round us out? Tell us who you are. Unmute, buddy.
Yep, that always gets me. Geoff Ulrich, Senior Vice President of Marketing here at Speedway Motorsports. I work with all 8 of our tracks basically across our 50 major events we do annually to leverage all of the data we have. We have a lot of data both qualitatively and quantitatively. And what we try and do is shape and model that data in ways that help us optimize our ticketing revenue. And then on top of that, we use a lot of our data to support sponsorship, retention, and acquisition.
Geez, is there anything you don't do? I will say one thing that you have done leading up to our panel discussion today is this incredible video that's going to set the table for what we're going to talk about, questions, topics, etc. So Max Snyder from our end, who's our Zoom wizard, as always, is going to queue up a video that Geoff and his team put together to get us started.
And inside the last great Coliseum, upwards of 30,000 fans since the pandemic, and they are ready to see NASCAR's finest in action in front of the largest sporting event crowd since the pandemic.
This right here is the best part of NASCAR. Fans are what make NASCAR great. Drivers know it. Drivers appreciate it. Fans bringing energy to the racetrack. Gentlemen, start your engine!
Thanks, Max. I don't know about the rest of you all, but I've got some chills. I think we all missed those live events. So can't wait to get back. And as you all saw on the screen, a lot of important topics that SMI and their tracks have already studied and that we're going to talk about here today. And as you all know, we as ALSD study the entire industry. And the SMI folks here today are going to give us learnings for not only racing type venues, but all of those, including the stick and ball sports that are, some of our core members as well. So I want to dive into the panel. We've got 40 minutes-ish. I'll obviously be kind to everyone on the time and hopefully take us not past that 45-minute mark. But Steve, why don't you tell us which races have run? And if you don't mind, sprinkle in the whole capacity pre-COVID and then which you've gotten to at this point on the live side.
And so absolutely. So 2020 has been an interesting year, and actually, as everybody knows, we started out the year, and NASCAR season always starts out in February, and we were in Daytona, and for one of our tracks, our first race this year was Las Vegas, and we were actually able to run that with fans at full capacity. And then the following weekend, we traveled to Atlanta, and we were seized with all the closures of national sports. We started seeing that during race week. We had the industry at the track. We had campers and fans in place at the facility. And on that Friday, that important decision was made to cancel the event and send everybody home. So, it created a really, really trying time for us and all of sports naturally, but we were in the seas of it and had fans on property and people willing and ready to come through the gates and watch a race and weren't able to do so. And we had to mitigate that and turn them away and send them home due to the COVID. So from that point, we started planning naturally how we could get back to racing and how we could get fans back. We all kind of went through that period of time where things slowed down, we stopped, and nothing happened, it seemed. We were all stuck in our houses and getting closer to our families, but also at the same time, we were trying to figure out what's the next moves. And, it was several weeks there that went by that nothing happened for the whole world. So we were kind of stuck with that scenario. Once we got through that, one of the big pieces for us was to get back to racing just in general so we could get it back on TV. And we were able to run several races, beginning the post-COVID lockdown, so to speak, with just competitors in the industry, no fans allowed. And it was really important for us to make sure during that protocol and that timing that we executed that with no avail. That way, moving forward, if we did that to perfection, then we could possibly get fans in the stands later on. And that worked out really, really well for what we saw. And, coming up, we had several races with no fans leading up. Charlotte, Bristol, Atlanta all ran without fans, and then we were able to move forward, and our first race with fans was the Bristol All-Star event. And it was one of the largest fan events, or was the largest fan event coming out of the pandemic that was attended. And so normal capacity at Bristol's around 150, 160,000 people, and the government and our protocols allowed us to have 30,000. And we were right there at that. Fans were pretty excited to get back. And naturally, there was some animation to not want to be part of a big group yet, but it was amazing at the NASCAR fans. And as we talk today, we'll learn some of the things we put in place to set that fear aside so people would feel comfortable coming to our events. We followed that event going to, and I'll get them all wrong, but to Texas the following weekend. Texas, we were also allowed to have fans. And we had a good turnout there. Our normal turnout in Texas, or our normal capacity is over 100,000. We got, I think, right at 130,000 capacity, and the government allowed us to have 20,000 for that event. And then we went to New Hampshire a couple weeks later, and New Hampshire's 100,000 person venue, and we were able to have 25,000 for that event. So we were able to work with the local governments, work with all that, and we'll get into that later, I'm sure, Amanda, but those were the events that we were able to get through the summer.
Well, and events don't run without a plan. And Geoff, I'll toss it over to you. Servicing and operating live events, it starts with one, right? So from 30,000 foot overview, tell us how you operated these, but starting with that plan first.
Yeah, Steve hit on a lot of great things that are very important for how we operated. Immediately, on March 11th, the NBA announced that they were going to start playing games without fans, and that was obviously a huge red flag. And then the NCAA came out right behind them that night, and honestly, at like 4:00 the next morning, we were on conference calls, and we were preparing through the night, but we knew we were going to have to do things if it impacted us in that Atlanta race in early March. And a couple of things we did that were critical really was looking at putting the fans' best interest first. And, we've been lucky the Smith family always puts the fan first. It's something that's ingrained in everyone here. And we were very aggressive. We came out with 125% credit if you left your money with us and you were going to put that towards an event in the future. And then we also offered a refund, and, very proud of the fact that a lot of people kind of copied us after that. And, it worked really well. It helped keep the fans, knowing that we had their best interests there. But then a lot of things, happened with those races we were running without fans. NASCAR immediately brought the iRacing platform forward. And that started replacing the live racing those 8 weeks we ran without fans. What it also did is it really engaged a whole new group of fans for us. It caught the gamers, and it caught the 18 to 34 crowd. And we still see the impact of that today. And we started running a lot of contests immediately to keep our fans on our database engaged with the sport. So we started running watch and wins where you could win prizes from our sponsors. So you could win Toyota prize packs, Coca-Cola packs, Next Grills from Next Grill. So, we wanted to keep people engaged. We couldn't take any risk that in this gap you were going to lose your interest immediately, following the pandemic impacting the sports. And then when we started, getting ready, as Steve said, we started building these plans. Everything we did was, about, as Steve said, the competitors, they had to be able to operate safely in an environment. So that impacted us, and it impacted the fan experience because you weren't allowed to go on pit road and in the garage, which are, some of our big selling points to NASCAR is our access that we provide. But then we really started working on, what can we do to keep our employees safe was critical. And what can we do to keep the fans safe? So Steve and Jessica and Marcus Smith and, our legal team started building these very robust plans. And while they were doing that, we created a safety council, basically, and we started creating the business rules for operating these events safely. And we came up with about 52 to 53 business rules for every event that we do. And then we started modeling capacity, and Steve hit on this, and I know everybody talks about the 30% or 50% or 25%. We really wanted to model how safely we could put fans in the venue. What did we have to do to get fans into a location where they're safe? And you saw that in some of the videos earlier. And then we started communicating the safety protocols to the fans. We wanted to go back to fans and confirm if you had that credit, if you wanted to use it. That was a big part of this. So, we're like, hey, we can safely seat this many people. Now, fans that have tickets, do you want to come back? We're going to do these things to keep you safe. You have this credit that you can apply to this event as well. And then we started modeling how many new fans we needed to acquire to fill the rest of the venue out and how efficiently we could do that in our marketing efforts. So I know that was a lot, but, it's been one hell of a pandemic, and, we've tried to tackle it aggressively every day.
Well, it has been one hell of a pandemic, but it sounds like, and you can, I guess, append any more thoughts that you have with the communication with fans. They wanted to know what was going on during this time as well. How crucial was that piece, and how did you hit on the communication with those guests?
The engagement, keeping them engaged was a big part of it, and giving our fans a reason to want to, to come back. And so we're fortunate with the way we're structured with our ticket agents. We can do a lot of outbound calling to folks and let them know, hey, we've got this contest. Hey, now we're getting ready to run a race without fans. You could win these prizes, but then we're going to run races with fans. And here are the safety protocols that are in place for you. Why not, use this as a great time to start testing new technology. So we had an automated email process ready. We started designing our email automation to go through the process of confirming the fans' desire to attend. Once they confirmed, it triggered an email to let them know we were working on assigning their seats. Once we assigned the seats, it triggered an email to basically let them know their seats have been assigned. And then it started with the education process, because one other beautiful thing you get to do and test on the fly is launching all digital tickets. And that's just amazing what our fans have done, and our teams of getting fans to migrate to digital tickets. And it's worked great for us. We've had a 98 to 99% utilization of digital tickets. So, everything about communication really resides within our wonderful ticket agents and our marketing teams and our automated technologies that we have.
So you're talking about communication with the clients and the fans. Talk about it from a staffing perspective. Something we all want to know is, when our staffs come back, there may have been some staffing changes, especially with those who may not have been full-time as well. So there's staffing and onboarding and the education of those folks as well. Jeff, do you have anything to add on that?
Just the fact that, that's where it all starts. And, all of these business rules and all of the communication that we were developing, we're spending a lot of time talking to our ticket agents about it so they can relay that back. I think the things that we've done around our offices, when Steve talked about the fact that we were getting the tracks ready, that meant no one was at the office. No one. So we closed the offices. We kept our staff at home. We all have become Zoom experts now, and we were Zooming and communicating with our teams every day. Hey, look, this is where we're going. These are the plans. These are the things we're going to do, so that they were in the loop and educated on it. And then Steve and Jess put in a plan, and I'll let them hit on it, to train our teams at the track when we had fans there, and even when we didn't. It was like trying to get into Fort Knox, and you were crazy if you attempted it. But when we did run with fans, there was a lot that went into making sure every employee and every fan was safe. So, Steve, I'll let you talk about how you guys did that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jeff. From a training's perspective, it was a total different training scenario for us to run live events. Naturally, we were pretty veteran at running live events from year to year, but not with the COVID measures in place and what the health departments were requiring. And again, making sure that the fans feel safe and they feel like it's something that, they'd want to come back to. So we went into definitely a planning state that we put in plans for our event staff, and that's always I think everybody in the sport has that same type where you bring in temporary people to work those events. They're not full-time. Putting that training scenario into place was definitely at the high point, because we wanted all those people to feel safe as well, to be working, not just the fans to show up. And a safe employee will also make a safe fan feel safe. So we had to follow all that we were pushed through. A lot of new things, definitely. Everything was learning from the fly. Everything changed daily or hourly with the CDC. We went from no temperature checks to temperature checks, mask always, no mask. So there was a lot of changes, and they continue to be changes. And that's something that we've been fluid with, throughout our training process, and just communication between each of us. Like Geoff was saying, the three of us that are on this panel, we can answer any of these questions that you're asking fluidly, because we've all been part of this planning and training from the get-go. So our employees are the same way. We've made sure that our employees stay as in tune with all the changes and information as we are.
Can you clarify if you brought any of them back in at what time in person to do this training? I know it's got to be probably a challenge and a hurdle to get over to do it over Zoom. So at what point were you able to bring them back?
A lot of it was done virtually. I mean, a lot of our training we had to do via computer, and most people have gotten pretty versed in, being at home and turning on the computers and using Zoom or some similar platform. We didn't really bring them back till race weeks. I mean, a couple of weeks prior to, and Jessica can touch on the F&B side as well. That's always a different scenario, and I know we'll get to that, but that's a different group too, that now you're touching people's food and things of that nature. So there's a lot of, ticket taking. We went from taking tickets and scanning physical tickets to now we're doing it virtually. So we had to train that. We went from allowing coolers in and backpacks to clear bags only, no coolers. So again, our ticket staff and staff at the gates had to learn all over again. Now we're looking for in a clear bag and do not touch, and there was a lot of things that we put in place that put all that into action and was able to execute it pretty well so far.
Jess, you want to put any thoughts to that?
Yeah, I mean, basically, they both guys kind of hit the nail on the head. The biggest thing was keeping our fans and our employees safe, and that's kind of where our focus shifted to. And once we had that part kind of figured out, then it was all about the communication and the constant engagement with our fans and constant communication with our staffing.
And your role as Chief Experience Officer is slightly different. Obviously, you can answer any of these questions as the guys pointed out, and we're part of the planning process, but best-in-class experience is one of your crucial roles, dealing with client services. So, tell us what that meant before and perhaps how your thoughts have evolved in these last 6-7 months.
Sure. Yeah, before it meant, we had people could go on pit road, you had pit road parties, you had driver meet and greets. The NASCAR world is just so accessible. It's, being in their locker rooms. So pre-race concerts, having, top A-list performers, and all that kind of had to go away. And that's all part of the experience for a NASCAR fan, camping out for days, enjoying the fan zone. And we didn't have any of that. So again, our focus kind of had to shift to Geoff engaging them, keeping them constantly engaged. And actually that kind of helped with our sponsors too. So it kept our sponsors relevant, and we could kind of dovetail it together. And everything just went back to that what's going to be safe for our fans? What can we do virtually? We had virtual fan zones, virtual meet and greets with drivers, virtual watch parties when we couldn't have fans there. So we try to keep that Speedway Motorsports level of excellence with our fans as best as we could. But again, it was all about, once they got to that facility, making sure that them and our employees were absolutely safe and in a safe environment.
Well, and you have several tracks. I mean, what about that communication, with your leadership or with all the different tracks? Walk us through that too.
So it, as you know, it was Geoff, myself, and Steve, and there was a few other folks that were kind of the main team of putting these protocols together, and Steve working with NASCAR. And as Steve mentioned before, he would hang up the phone and call us, and we would get on a call and figure out what we need to do. And literally 5 minutes later, it would completely change. So it was just this very, very fluid, protocol deal that we needed to keep up with, and keeping our leadership engaged, because they're the ones that have the contact with our local government. So it was really important for them to know where we are or where we were with the local governments, and did we need them to engage with the governor. It's so important for these team owners and facility owners to have that good relationship, because that, when I needed somebody to pick up the phone to call a governor of a state, like we were kind of running into roadblocks, just making sure that they were fully armed with all of the information of where we were in the protocol status.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Let's shift gears, because there's a topic that we all want to know about, and that's food and beverage. And I'll stay on you, Jessica. Curious to know the operations and the innovation, frankly. Tell us how the operation worked and what you had to consider to be able to have food and beverage at these events.
Sure. So not only did we have to have Levy be part, Levy's our food and beverage partner, so we had to then be part of our protocol position with the local governments, but they also have to adhere to the local health authority, which is a totally different subset. So, and I want to say, Geoff and Steve, it was less than a month where we knew we were going to have fans. I can't remember exactly what our note, I mean, it might have been like
31 days.
Yeah.
Okay, 31 days. So by that point in time, food and beverage is already ordered. They're working on stuff. So we had to really just focus on doing a limited menu, but doing it very well. And also, what was the premium experience going to be? So we got lucky. We have really, really great partners at a lot of our tracks, between Coca-Cola, Food City, and some other local restaurants that we work with. So Levy actually partnered with them to build these really great prepackaged meals, and that's what we did for premium. They were excellent, and they could be executed well. They were put together safely. And then from a concession standpoint, going from coolers to no coolers was a really big challenge and a big concern we had, especially with our fans, because it's such a great fan amenity that they've been used to for over 60 years. And so just making sure that we had reasonably priced concession items, and it was just more about the experience of getting at that point, it really wasn't about making a dime. It was making the experience good for the fans and being able to execute it in a safe way.
Yeah, how the fans respond to it. And if you can hit on, premium, which is our core audience, if not, no big deal. We want to know about concessions too, but tell us what their reaction was.
Yeah, so from a concession stand, nobody was happy about not being able to have coolers, but everybody kind of understands where we are in the world right now. And it was not it wasn't a surprise. The biggest challenge we actually had is cash is the majority of our business and concessions, and we went completely cashless. And I think that was probably where we had most of the pain points. But we got through that, and we'll continue to evolve that and make that better for the fan experience. But that was again, just being mostly cash property for concessions and having to go all cashless was a challenge. And from a premium standpoint, it depended where we were. Each state was different on how many people you could have indoors. So, it was very limited. So it was easy to execute on a suite level and a club level. And so everything was actually executed very well. And it really, we actually got a lot of compliments. I think people were really kind of shockingly surprised. It wasn't just a crummy box lunch kind of thing. The presentation was very good, and it was, you couldn't have the snacks that you have out all day and the grazing and the common food areas. So we just had to really get creative, and the fact that we did that, I think the suite holders and customers were really appreciative because they felt safe about it. And they felt good being able to take their food and eat it, not have to worry about anything.
I'm not sure if any of you hit on this to begin with, the capacities for your suites and clubs. Can you give any statistics, either one of you, the three of you, I guess?
Some of our facilities, and Steve can jump in, Texas, we have almost 200 suites. They're the average of 64-person suites. Some of our clubs hold 1,000 people. But each state was different. That some were like a 10-person limit gathering indoors or 50% capacity. Some went with what they were doing with the restaurants, and I'll let Steve jump in because he knows a little bit more on.
Yep, absolutely. So just like Jessica had said, in Texas we had a different rule than we did in Tennessee, and naturally than we did in New Hampshire. New Hampshire was a little bit tighter on the regulations that we could take into those suite areas. One thing that we did on all the suite areas, and this was prior to us doing all temperature checks for all fans, we had a couple races where we did not have to do temperature checks for fans coming in, but we did check anybody going into the suite area because it was an enclosed space. So that varied from state to state, what the local government and the local health departments, the health guidelines were for those local areas.
Yeah, that makes sense. I want to go back to the other issue of technology and innovation. I want to ask Geoff this question, if you can answer it on the cashless, the frictionless. I mean, we've talked about those topics at nauseum, but you guys had to fast forward. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I mean, it was the same as all the other education we had to do. And I mean, it's almost like cramming for a final in college, I mean, we were loading these fans up with just so much information and how different the entire experience was going to be. But the one thing that really worked in our favor was the migration to digital tickets and the fact that we had a seamless integration with Ticketmaster. So fans were migrating to our app already, and our app is very flexible in what we can do with it as far as personalizing communication within it. So we were able to educate fans through that as well to be ready for this type of different experience. So I think the mobile app's been one of our big wins in this. And then Jessica had been working with Square, I want to say, for 2 years already. And that's a really nice purchasing process for our fans. It makes it easy to go cashless and mobile. So that helped a lot too. So I think if we didn't have that in place, I don't know what we would have done, to be honest with you.
What was the simplest way that fans could learn about how to deal with and operate alongside you this new cashless and mobile ticketing plan? Is there one or two maybe piece of advice you could give for other venues who also are maybe have already done it, but if they haven't, are looking to do it as well?
For us, it's the website and video is critical in that. And then on top of it, our email and our email open rates are exceptional, especially when fans are, already have their tickets and they're getting excited about the experience. But the one we learned a lot about, and our social teams have been uncovering this, is just putting more of the short form videos out there and making sure fans see it, because they're so rabid on social media right now. So I said, don't miss social when you're communicating these new protocols to fans as well.
Sure, that's great advice. Take us down the path of your task force and what you did after these races. You got together, obviously the three of you did, but post race leading into the next has to be another one of those crucial elements, the whole learning afterwards type of thing. Talk us through that one too, Geoff.
Yeah, one of the things, we're out and about and traveling and going to live events when they're available. We've been to, working with NASCAR very closely and going to their events, and at our events, we try and document everything, every part of the experience. We're all taking photos. We compile all the photos immediately after the race, put our notes into them, and then we review how that event went and internally. And then we get the best practices and learnings documented. We go back and review the business rules, and then we update those and recommunicate those out to the next event. Simultaneously, our marketing teams are watching and shifting. As Steve mentioned, New Hampshire, we had to update all of our safety communication the week of. So we've got a team that just leads that for us. So they're flexible. They had all the donuts ready to go. So we had a section where masks weren't mandatory, and now they were. And we had a section ready on temperature checks, so we put those in, republish all of that the week of the race. And, I really feel like the consumer wants to be at these live events so much that they're seeking this information. I couldn't believe it. I wasn't in New Hampshire, but I was on pins and needles waiting on Steve to call and let us know how temperature checks were going that we put in the week of the race. But fans got it. And they knew they had to have their mask on, and I think that's what others will experience is, if you just get the communication ready, they're going to consume it, and they're going to comply to these policies, because we all want to get back to live events and anything that resembles normal.
Steve, talk to us about those temperature checks, buddy. Well, I want to know more than just the temp checks. There are so many safety guidelines, and frankly, how you adhered to them. It sounds as if your clientele was, incredibly flexible and patient with you as you did that. But tell us how you dealt with all of that.
Yeah, so we've been blessed with great fans. I mean, naturally, our fan base is an avid group that are definitely wanting to be at a live venue and willing to do things that out of the norm would be in place for these events. We started this whole journey, naturally state to state, the guidelines were initially different. Just like we said, we had to be pretty fluid in changing. They're continuing to change as we move forward with some live events coming close to us in the next few weeks. But each state has changed, so we've had to work with those local health departments and whatnot to make sure that they're good with what we put in place. We've adopted as a company that we're doing temperature checks at all of our events for the rest of the year, and started that in New Hampshire. New Hampshire, I think we went into that week, like Geoff alluded to, with no temperature checks, and by Tuesday of race week, we were now doing temperature checks. So we had to initiate, tents and whatnot to be able to protect, because most of those infrared thermometers are not very valid whenever they're out in the middle of the sun and it's 90 degrees. So you have to look at things of those natures and how to put those to where you're going to get the most efficiency out of them and not be turning fans away. Naturally, just not to get in the weeds, but when you do temperature checks, you always have to have a secondary check, because you do get false readings, which can cause a backup at a gate system, which we had to look at very quickly. We had, I think, 4 days, right, Geoff, something like that, to make that change, to figure out what that secondary screening station would look like and how we would accommodate a hot weekend that we did have in New Hampshire, which is a little bit odd. It seems like when we race in New Hampshire, it does tend to be warm, but this time we had some warm temperatures, but the fans were great. Mask, it was one of those, how do you police mask? I think that was a question that a lot of, people would ask from an operational stance. How do you keep people to keep their mask on? How do you keep them socially distanced? How do you naturally police that? How do you make sure people are adhering to those rules and keeping the social guidelines so you don't end up on the news that night for having people piled in side by side and no mask on and things that we don't want to have? We want to make people feel safe and feel like they can come in. So we did a lot of communicating. Like Geoff talked about, we did that through our app. We did that through email blast. We did that through social media. Just the numerous ways of virtual to get it out there to communicate to the fans prior to them getting to the event. And then once they got to the event, we had tons of signage, probably more than what was required from a social stance that, the government had put out. You see that now. You go to Dunkin' Donuts and get your coffee, you've got a spot on the floor. You can imagine all the different concessionaire points, the different suites, the different elevator towers that all of our venues have, not just in the NASCAR world, but just in sports in general. There's a lot of signs that have to go in place to make that happen. And we were able to accommodate that. We used a lot of bike fence to separate people getting into concessionaires to where you have an in and an out. Again, when you're a chain store like a fast food joint, that's easy to take care of. But when you start talking about stadiums, it makes it a little bit different, because you have huge concourses, huge areas that are social points that people normally congregate in that we had to keep socially distant. So lots of signage. Luckily, PAs, big TVs, lots of just visuals that let people know and reminded them, be safe, practice good social distances, practice hygiene, lots of hand sanitizer units that we would set out, hand sanitizers at all entry points, all restrooms, near concession stands. So, it's added a lot of operational cost to us. But at that point, it was well worth it to give safety to those fans. Marcus and the Smith family, like Geoff had alluded to and Jessica said too, and you'll hear us say it numerous times, fans are first. So we wanted to take that into account, and anything we could do to make them feel safer, we definitely wanted to do.
So you mentioned all the checks and things. Those happened, it sounds like, at the entry points, and you didn't have to bring in any ancillary checkpoints or anything like that. That was all done within kind of the confines of the venue and the entrance spaces. Is that right?
Absolutely. One of the great things about NASCAR races that made it a little easier for us is we've always allowed coolers. So we've always had a checkpoint for coolers as they came in. With us taking coolers out and going to clear bags, that gave us an easy place to also do temperature checks at that point and check those clear bags. So we were able to do that, and then you would proceed to your checkpoint to get your virtual ticket scanned on your phone, and then you were in the venue.
So you talked a little bit about budget allocation, how it may have changed. I'll ask Jessica, and if Geoff wants to add on to it too, he certainly can. But at a high level, where were those, or are those resources now being allocated with all of this in mind?
So at the beginning of the pandemic, when everybody was kind of home those first couple of weeks and not sure what was going on, our leadership team kind of jumped in and took the time to reevaluate our org chart and our business, and where are there places that we could have better efficiencies. So we kind of reorganized pretty much all of our departments, and it's something that we should have done a long time ago, because we have a pretty deep bench of a lot of talent that's just spread across the board. And so instead of utilizing talent specific for Las Vegas Motor Speedway, how can they help the all of the 7 other tracks in addition to Las Vegas Motor Speedway. So we really kind of took some of our A players at each place and made it a little bit more centralized, so they're helping all of the speedways. So that was a big move for us from the organization, and it's really paid off. It's been successful. It's been easy, and I think some of the stuff that Geoff's team's putting out that Steve's able to execute is a testament to the folks that are working together all across all tracks.
In some of the allocations, did you look into new technologies? A question from the audience, something along the lines of reverse ATMs, or a way that when a lot of your cash type of clients came in, what did you do with those?
We did a test actually in New Hampshire with reverse ATM, and we'll probably try it at another event, depending on which one. If we can have fans at Vegas may seem like a good one to try that out, since they traditionally could not bring coolers in there. So we are testing different things like that out.
Great. Geoff, do you want to add any thoughts on the operations and perhaps Ingress and Egress? I know that both you and Steve do that, but why don't you attack that topic?
Yeah, that's definitely a little more in Steve's wheelhouse than mine. But a lot of the stuff to us is just on the communication of what the plan is to get fans in and out. But we have definitely, worked on staggered entry times and communicating those. And it's another thing that is almost impossible to believe, that fans are, they're looking at it, they get it, they're watching their times, and they're lining up and going in those windows.
You do have good fans, Geoff. My goodness, I don't know that you can corral adults, to say you got to enter at this time. So good for you guys. And did I see, I think in your video, maybe one of the reasons I asked, I thought we saw VIP parking in that opening video. Was that something that went over? Did I get that right?
Well, we've one of the things that's happened because the corporate sponsors, and one of the big experiences for us is the corporations come and bring these elaborate displays to execute on our property and engage the fans. We couldn't have those, and those are usually in close proximity to the venue. So because the sponsors didn't want to have fans congregating at their displays, so what we ended up doing is taking that space and making it additional parking. And because we're not running trams, fans knew that, and they're like, well, if I can get a VIP access spot for X dollars, it became, a nice incremental revenue source for us, and it's a great convenience for the fan.
Yeah, for sure. Why don't you go back to that partnership topic, because it's something I wanted to get into in the nature of time. I'm going to fast forward a little bit. You've got a background in partnerships, and I'm curious to know what some of those conversations were like leading up to the events, and even since some of them have run, working with, and the conversations you had with your partners.
Well, I start every call with our corporate sales team by thanking them, because it's a battle, first of all, inside the corporations to defend the investments during these times. It's also a challenge for our teams to come up with ways to provide additional value, and in ways that may be different from what the sponsor had been seeking. And so we've got to, kind of readjust the evaluation tools with them, and then come up with different ways to help them maximize their communication and touch points. And some of the things Jessica hit on earlier, digital programs have been an unbelievable hit in our world, and the amount of traffic we're getting on those. Virtual fan zones, where, you'll see at our tracks, you can go and click, and instead of, what you would experience at the track, now you can experience that overall. And then, building programs like the Watch and Wins to keep our sponsors engaged with the fans, building unique social programs and promotions, and just leveraging the tools we have to provide additional value, along with the traditional signage and things that we can bonus them at our events.
Yeah, I want to hear from Jessica on that note. As you mentioned, I want to talk about, look, we want to get back in person, but what if we can't? And what if there are some fans that haven't apprehended to come back yet? What can you do virtually right now, perhaps as a supplement or as an alternative?
I think I kind of mentioned it before, the virtual watch parties, and just like Geoff mentioned, keeping them constantly engaged. And then not only that doesn't just help our fans, it helps our sponsors too, when we can integrate the two together. We've also brought in our Speedway Children's Charities, our charitable arm, and they've auctioned off virtual experiences with drivers, meet and greets on Zoom. get to race them on an iRacing game. So it's just a constant engagement and just trying to think of things in a different out-of-the-box way than what we've traditionally been able to do at the track.
Sure, and one of those items that you touched on is merchandise. How did that conversation change or evolve during this time?
The biggest change was our gift shops. We couldn't open up any of our gift shops, and we did not take our trailers to the races. Now that's going to change moving forward with the remaining races. We will have our trailers there. Fans love it. It's just part of the experience. So we're excited to have that back. The drivers are excited for their merchandise to be back. Everything prior to that was done out of the brick and mortar stands on the concourse. But you could tell people were ready to spend money. They were buying up merchandise like crazy, and they wanted that shirt. They were at that race, and they wanted people to know that they were at that race, and they were going to buy that hat and buy that shirt. So.
Yeah, sure. Geoff, go ahead. You came off mute there.
Not much to add to that one. I think Jess said it pretty good, to be honest.
Yeah, that's cool. Steve, one of the other areas that you work pretty heavily in is some of your capital projects and developments there. Anything that was done maybe prior to COVID or even on the heels of it in terms of capital projects that helps with either communication with fans while they're at the events, the health and safety checks? What can you tell us?
Yeah, so we'd actually in the past have built some of the largest big screens in the sporting industry. We've got the largest pre-hung, center-hung structure in Bristol with Colossus. That one has, played really well for that communication to the fans of, the social distance, of the reminding, being able to bring some of those things that they're used to do in the infield and being right next to the driver and getting interviews and post-race victory circle things that were able to be put up on those screens. And, also the safety side, just continuing to remind fans. One thing that Geoff mentioned earlier that you were talking about on the entry and exit, one of the best experiences ever was Bristol. We actually had an exiting plan for the fans to be able to exit by row and staggered. And unbelievably, I would have told you at the beginning of that there was no way that was going to work. People were going to leave when they wanted to leave, and they were hugely cooperative. It was unbelievable. It was like being at church, pew 1 gets to go and pew 2. And they actually
gave each person $100 bill or something as they
and they actually did it. It was amazing how the fans did that, and it worked out great because it also helped with the parking exiting when they left, because now they're staggered when they're leaving the facility. And that's how much fans want to be at live events, and it just kind of proved that all the communication that we had given and done up to that point, that they followed that. Some of the other capital things that we had done in the past, upgrading our PAs, that also helped with communication naturally, being able to voice that and things that people could hear. Some of our PA systems were pretty delinquent and didn't work really well, so with new PAs we were able to tell fans and they could hear it. Racing's not the quietest venue to be at during an event to be able to communicate that, but those PAs helped in the restrooms and things. So those were two of the major ones that really helped out during COVID times and post-COVID, that just happened to be excellent safety features during the COVID times.
Steve, I would say the knee trays that you put in everywhere actually helped out with the social distancing when placing the fans in the seats, because it helped us with every other row and keeping everybody, that 6 feet apart. So
great.
I didn't hear what you said, Jess. What are these knee plates you said?
Oh, I'll let.
Yeah, no worries. That's a great point, Jessica. So we have actually, to enhance the fan experience, naturally fans, the days of being on 16-inch seats and having 16-inch butts doesn't exist anymore, right? So we've all kind of moved past that point. So to be able to give the fan a better experience and putting fans first, Marcus had given us the tour of going out and figuring out how to make a better experience when you're sitting in the grandstands. So we had basically put in knee trays in front of each seat, which gave the ability for our food and beverage servers or hawkers to have an aisleway to be able to serve drinks, and also the fan to have a larger leg room in front of them. And that helped us when we got into this scenario to be able to social distance in the grandstand. Naturally, Geoff and the team were working to sell tickets where we were only selling in family blocks or group blocks. That way you didn't end up sitting next to 20 people. You were only with your group of 4. And when we started looking at our stadiums and how we could separate that, that initiative that we had been putting in place the last 2 years of having every other row a drink row helped us have that 6-foot spacing between groups. So that was a great point, Jessica. I about forgot that one. So thanks for bringing it back.
Yeah, no doubt. That's a rather serendipitous that happened a year ago, not even anticipating this. Look, we're up against the clock, but there's a couple items that I know we talked about in a planning call that you guys hit on that we didn't address yet. So I'm going to start with some closing comments here from each of you. And I'm going to start with Geoff, because I want you to address, among other things, if you so choose, this whole idea of the keeping our fans safe and also the psychology behind it. You know, we want them to feel safe, both physically, mentally, emotionally, et cetera. So hit on that. And again, if you want to append any final thoughts as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's the number one thing you've got to do is, you know, make sure, you know, and Steve really did hit this out of the park earlier when he said, if your employees feel safe, your fans will feel safe. And so that's so important to not forget that. You know, I mean, it's easy to communicate a lot of things out to fans and across multiple channels, but, you know, it starts internally, I would say is critical there. And then I think constantly keeping your finger on the pulse of your fans. You need to have your ticket agents, you know, communicating back to you. What are they hearing? What are the fans saying? You know, we've been doing a lot of outbound calling. You've got a credit on your account. Why aren't these fans coming back? You know, are they nervous about the pandemic? Has the economy hurt them? What is the situation? So you can react to that and pivot on that quickly if you need to go in another direction. And I would say the one thing to, you know, really keep in mind is just because you're opening the gates doesn't mean they're going to come back. I think we all thought the demand would be so high that you'd just be like, oh, well, we can't possibly get everyone in here. And it's really, you know, it really takes some strategic marketing to get these fans engaged. And what we've seen through the iRacing efforts that we've been doing and the marketing we've been doing is we're starting to appeal to a much younger demographic, which gives us a lot of optimism for the future. And so we've had to kind of change our messaging strategies a bit to a new persona that we've created. And I would say, you know, you have to be monitoring those things and obviously your numbers every day and how you're performing against your segments for tickets so that you can address, you know, from a higher level, all the things you're hearing to get your strategies right. To go back to what you originally asked, how do you make people feel safe? How do you let them know this is a new experience?
Communication is key. It seems obvious, but sometimes you forget, or sometimes you have trepidation that you may not know the answers. Doesn't matter.
Well, and that data is key. I mean, you've got to be getting the data in on what the fans are saying and how they feel. And
that's from calling your clients, as you point out. Again, even if you don't have the answers, call and ask them to provide you some types of insights, because that could get you to some of the answers. Jessica, I see you shaking your head. Why don't you give us your final thoughts there?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, too, it's all about communication. You know, I think we've all said this, everything was so fluid. And in order for all of us to do our jobs, we all had to know what the other one was doing. So it all flow. You have to communicate up, you have to communicate internally, communicate with your partners, your vendors, your sponsors. Just the more you can, I don't think in this situation you can ever over communicate.
Yeah, I think we would all agree with that. So, Steve, drum roll, drive us home.
Yeah, so I mean, one thing that I think we are all engraved, especially from the Speedway Motorsports side, that Marcus and the Smith family has put into our minds is, you know, at the end of the day, it's our job to create memories. And we create memories for people that come to our facilities. And, you know, in the whole sporting industry, not just NASCAR, but that's what we're doing is we're creating memories. It's not so much about the live event, but it's the memories you create with your family or your dad going to the event over and over. So being able to create a memory in a time of a pandemic and create a memory that people can come in and not have fear, that's the biggest push that we've tried to push. And I think every day we're reminded that from Marcus, and we're reminded that when we're making these plans is how we create those memories for the fans to be able to come to a live event and have that sense of normalcy in such a weird world right now. So I think at the end of the day that we've all, you know, worked and communicated and understand the leadership roles that we have, and we've been given the opportunities to take that and run with it and make an event that people want to come to, and that we can create memories for, again, people in this weird sense of what is normal right now and move forward with it.
The word is abnormal, Steve, and it certainly is. 2020 is. But look, you guys, I think, one thing I heard today and a couple times leading up is a simple thank you goes a long way. And so I'd like to say that to all three of you and also to our audience. This conversation's not going to end. I want to continue it with you all and also continue with those in the audience. If you have more questions, if you have comments, if you have solutions for what's going on right now, or you know what your task forces are doing, you've got documents that you could share. That's why our association exists. So we would ask you to send us anything of relevance. And again, say thank you to the three that did share their insights today. So once again, thank you to Steve, Jessica, and Geoff. And we'll see you virtually at the ALSD Conference and Trade Show and Design and Build Forum. Until then, cheers, everyone.